Over the years when you watched other first families, have you ever said to yourself, if I'm ever in that position, I'm not going to do something like that?
Yes, I think so. I'm going to be as low-keyed as possible. I think that there is well, first of all, I think the important thing is to be ourselves and not try to be anything else, and not commercialize the relationship between my dad and our family. And so I think all of us feel a responsibility to our parents to not show off or gimmick up the situation, and to be responsible adults. We're a little different from most in that, I'm 42 years old. I've lived a lot of my life already. I feel very secure as to who I am and where I've been, and don't feel a need to be anything other than kind of a half-broke oil man from West Texas. But I think they're not naming specifics. I think there is a responsibility. I think you'll find us to be a low-keyed family.
Do you feel pressure from all the attention?
Some, not nearly as much as I would 20 years ago. I still feel my blood pressure rise when people mischaracterize my father. I love him and respect him, and come to his defense. I think I'm more reasoned about what politics is all about now. I ran for the United States Congress in 1978, came in second in a two-man race. So I understand a lot of politics, but I do feel pressure a little bit. I don't feel pressure to perform in any way, but I feel the pressure of anticipation of how the outcome will be, and I don't like some of the coverage that George Bush gets. If I think it's unfair, I tend to rise to the bait, but pretty relaxed about things.
Ever a time when you have a competition among your siblings, whether a total of 5?
Yeah, 5. Well, there's always good, healthy competition. We're always trying to stomp each other in horseshoes or the tennis court, but no, we've shared the responsibility and the burden. The country is huge. We're all from different regions of the country. I'm from Texas, Jeb is from Florida, Brother Neil's from the West, Colorado, and Marvin's from Virginia, and Dorothy's from Maine. So when it comes to the spotlight or campaigning for our dad, we've got a regional separation to begin with. We love to appear together because we tend to complement and bounce off each other, but really not in terms of who's going to be more successful, whose stack of chips is higher than the other person's. My dad never valued a person based on their net worth, and hence we don't either. And so the competition is good, clean, healthy competition.
How Texan are you?
I'm pretty Texan. I was Midland, Texas is where I was raised. Houston, Texas is where I spent a lot of time, and then after a stint at Harvard Business School, I chose to return back to Midland to try to make enough money to survive, and I really have a great affinity for Texas. It's a great state. It's a state where I'm going to spend my life, and I think it's got a lot to offer for people.
What do you most remember about growing up in Midland, Texas?
I would say that ours was a life of Little League baseball, very outdoors neighborhood, a lot of backyard barbecues. My mother and I and Dad, I can remember clearly going to see the Odessa High Broncos play the Midland High Bulldogs over in Odessa, one of the big regional clashes that still to this date is high-powered high school football. It's plain and simple, not very sophisticated, but full of good, solid values. And I think when I had a choice of moving anywhere in the country and chose to move back to Midland, it was those early childhood memories that lured me back. Midland is, in the 70s, during the oil boom, was a gold rush type town. It was entrepreneurship at its highest form. It was exciting. A lot of people coming in and out, and a lot of people drilling wells, and it was a chance for people who didn't have much to begin with to have a shot to make some money. And now it's the exact opposite, of course, but it's an exciting place to live. Not too good to look at, but good folks and good place to be.
Do you remember the first time in your childhood when your dad started talking politics at the dinner table?
Not really. I would say the first time I remember was when we moved to Houston and he became the Harris County chairman. He was pretty consumed by his business. After all, he and Hugh Litke, his partner, were young guys, when they went and built the first offshore drilling, very technologically, not the first, but technologically advanced offshore drilling rigs, they were 35 or 36-year-old men, and I think that totally consumed my dad at that point. I know he was very proud of his father, who was a United States Senator from Connecticut, who really set an example of public service, the baton of which has been passed to my brothers and I. We all believe in public service as well. But I don't remember my dad talking about, well, if this race were available, I'd run for it, or I never viewed him as a politically ambitious person until he got to Houston and got involved in the trenches there as the Harris County Party chairman.
When did you personally get interested in what your dad was saying about politics?
I'd say I remember the 1964 race against Ralph Yarborough. I was gone away to school, so I wasn't there in Texas, and I missed a lot of the action.
Where in school?
Andover, Massachusetts. Tough adjustment for a Midland, Texas boy. But I'd say the most memorable event in my dad's early career was when he voted for open housing as a congressman from Houston, and his life was threatened, and the hullabaloo was loud and noisy, and he went back and confronted his constituents with his beliefs and why he voted for when he did, and left with the audience on their feet cheering. And that to me sticks out in my mind as by far the most meaningful public event besides the campaign rallies that he took as a political figure. Of course, then the swirl of the 60s took place, and I was pretty well preoccupied with my own learning how to fly jets, believe it or not, in the Texas Air National Guard, which, as you know, has become quite famous over the last couple of days. And but that was the most memorable political stance he took.
What happened at Andover? Did it change your view of the world at all?
It taught me how to read and write pretty well, but not really. It just increased my desire to go back to Texas. Andover was a great education. It was a tough adjustment for me to make. I was pretty good at getting along with people. I wouldn't say I was a great scholar, and it was hard academics. Then went on to Yale, which I'm proud of that, of course. Had it not been Yale, it would have been the University of Texas. And
what did you do at Yale?
I was a history major. Enjoyed it. Got a good, broad liberal arts education. But like most of the people in my generation, as I got to my senior year on, was totally consumed by what I'd be doing in the military after Yale, and went in then to the Texas Air Guard as a fighter pilot. Went and trained for 18 months on active duty, and then flew actively in the Guard. But my education, one of the things my dad has done for all of us, he said, I'm going to educate you well, and good luck. After that's over, go out. And so he has raised independent kids, all of us free to speak our own mind at any time, and all of us still do to this day. Let him know what we think. All of us having our own careers, and none of us feeling compelled to compete with him in any way, because he's never been the type of father who said, son, I want you to be a great halfback. Let's go hit the tackling dummy all day long. He's always said, go do your own thing.
When you were a kid, did your dad give you an allowance?
I can't remember. Such I probably.
You remember when you earned your first $1?
No, I remember this, though. I remember roughnecking in the summer. I remember selling sporting goods for Sears and Roebuck another summer. I remember riding horses on a working cattle ranch in Prescott, Arizona for a summer. My point is that every summer, at least when I was growing up, I was told to work, and went out and sought employment and did work. So I guess my real dollar I earned probably was the first summer was, I think, on the ranch. Went and worked at Blunt for Senate campaign in Alabama. I had a brief experience with an agribusiness company in downtown Houston. Flew for the Guard quite a bit during that period, and then went on to Harvard Business School after 5 years from graduation. it's kind of an interesting vocational training exercise. Learned enough of the skills to be a businessman, then went back to Texas and started my own little exploration company.
What keeps drawing you back to Texas?
It is a state where individualism is very important, where it's got great opportunity in Texas. It's a state that encourages growth, and it's a state that has got a certain sense of pride to it that I like. I just happen to think that Texas has got problems, although it's growing out of them, but the opportunities in that state are just enormous. And I'm a person who's always seeking opportunity.
You're living in Midland?
Right.
You going to stay there for the rest of your life?
I don't think so. Laura and I sold our house to come up to Washington to be in the campaign, which has been, by the way, for a political junkie, a fantastic experience to be close to my dad during this and to see the management skills of a Jim Baker or the tactical political skills of Lee Atwater, and to see Roger Ailes in action and then to be out there on the stump myself. It's been fantastic. But we sold our house in Midland, and we'll be making a choice immediately after the election to move back to Texas, and we're looking at West Texas, where my roots are. And my wife was born in Midland, by the way, and raised there, or maybe Dallas.
If we could follow you around every day, all the time, what would we see differently about this campaign, behind the scenes, than what we see out front?
Well, I think first of all, if you followed me around, just take next week, for example, I would be in 15 cities in 3 days in Texas. Smaller cities where people appreciate the junior varsity. The big cities are sophisticated. They'll cover dad, maybe mother, but not the offspring. But a city like Abilene, Texas, or Temple, Texas, or Lubbock, Texas, appreciate the fact that someone like myself has come and campaigned there. So you'll see me going to talk to the people of the community through the media about George Bush, but also see us talking to our people in the trenches. You win politics by attracting good people who are willing to work for you. And the message is simple. We need you, and we love you, and we're going to fight with you together. And then here at the headquarters, you'd see a lot of meetings, a lot of goals, momentary goals being set, and then a follow-up to see if they've been met. Today we're going to do this. Have you done it yet? 8 hours later. Good management. Jim Baker is a very well-organized man who has got a command presence, obviously, here at the headquarters. And I think you'd see a well-run, disciplined campaign.
You get a sense, though, that with planning, you can go out with a goal and watch it take effect?
Yes.
And can you give us an example of where you, as a campaign, your father's done this and it's worked?
Well, I think in the primaries, for example, to set a $28 million budget and to have been 0.4% over that budget was not only indicative of the type of manager he'll be and the ability to attract good people, set a goal of staying within budget and doing so, but it sent out a signal to primary voters that the campaign was well run, was smooth. Unlike other campaigns, ours was a smooth functioning political machine. And I think there's an example. I think from a political strategy, the idea of going into Super Tuesday and winning big on Super Tuesday, planning for a Super Tuesday victory, recruiting 3 good governors, Sununu of New Hampshire, a lot of good governors, but tactically important governors during that period, Sununu Campbell of South Carolina that gave us the bump going into Super Tuesday, and Thompson of Illinois that closed the process, was an example of setting a strategy, a goal, tactically following through, and then being right.
Again, go back to the original question about what do you see that we don't see, and I would get back to conversations you may have with your dad. Are there things that your dad just can't say out there in the world?
Well, I think so. I think the thing that I see that maybe a lot don't see is that here is a man who has got an inner calm to him that is very impressive to his oldest son. He is, I'll never forget standing on the lawn at the house. And I said, Dad, how do you feel? He's 17 points down. This is, a month ago or 2 months ago. And once again, people in the press were saying he's through. And He's politically had it, and cartoonists were drawing ugly pictures of him. And he said, son, I've been there. I know what I'm about to head into. I know times things will change and opinions are going to change. But I myself feel good about where I've been and where I'm going. And to me, I don't know if people can see that or not. I think they began to see that at the convention, his speech at the convention. But there is a sense of perspective about George Bush and a sense of calm. It's almost as if I'm going to fight the good fight, and what happens, happens. My mother summed it up beautifully the other day. She said, well, the question is what happens if he loses? Of course, we don't think in terms of losing at this point. And my mother said, well, that'll be all right. I'll still be able to bend over in my garden. And I think they've got a good sense of themselves now. And I don't know if people see that or not. They will as the campaign progresses.
As you travel around and you go to these smaller towns and you talk to people and you talk to the press, do you hear the same questions, same concerns everywhere you go, or do you find that people are different?
I think there's regional differences, different emphasis we place on trying to distinguish Mike Dukakis from George Bush. But typically, you do find the line of the day, what's hot on the news, is reflected in people's questions. Iran-Contra last fall, I mean, that's all I heard. The stock market going down. The momentary is what you see. But then there are the long-term questions people have about philosophy or steadiness or character. And
what's the question that's most often asked of?
Is George Bush his own man? And that question was answered at the convention loud and clear. But it's the frustration of being a good vice president. In other words, the Van Buren factor, Martin Van Buren factor, being the last sitting vice president to succeed, has got some grain of truth to it, because in order to be a good vice president and a loyal vice president like my dad has been, you basically subjugate yourself to your boss. But now that the convention came, where he gave a tremendous speech in this prejudiced opinion, he's now on his own and ready for it. But up to that point in time, people were saying, when's he going to be himself? Is he strong enough to lead? And there was constant reminding people that, yes, this man is ready for the job, and just give him a chance. Wait for the events to unfold. You see, I think another thing you don't see is that of all the people in our campaign, he, the candidate, is by far the most experienced in national politics. And so therefore, on major strategic decisions, George Bush has called the shots. Strategic decision number one, I will be loyal to Ronald Reagan no matter what the circumstances may be. And remember, it wasn't easy during the Iran-Contra affair. It was a tough year for the president and the vice president. And George Bush was willing to take his lumps politically. Strategic decision two, at the convention, the announcement of a person of my generation as the vice presidential running mate, I think will be a plus in the long term. He not only set the tone of the campaign by choosing Senator Quayle, but also he himself made the decision as to the timing. And so I think it's important for people to understand that on the major strategic decisions, George Bush has set the tone of the campaign, the pace. And in terms of him using the convention as the starting point for who's the real George Bush, that was his decision, and I think it will prove to be a right one.
From your experience, how much power does the media have in determining or steering things in a direction that will eventually determine how this election is going to come out?
I think a lot.
Too much?
No, not necessarily. I was going to amend that by saying a lot for the momentary. I think that probably one of the lowest points in journalism, in my opinion, was the Newsweek cover article that basically said George Bush was a wimp the day he announced for president. That his big day of going out in front of the American people, we had TV anchormen holding up a cover of this Newsweek. That's impact journalism. Obviously, that did not have much of an impact because he won the primaries.
Why do you think they did that?
I don't know. We better ask them. I suspect my own prejudiced view, and I'm only reflecting my own, I'm a feisty kind of guy, is that they may not want to see him as president. I don't know. I found it to be a classic political cheap shot. But that had momentary impact. Actually, more than momentary, it had some lasting impact because it gives his opponents an easy peg, an easy adjective to label him with. But I think, by and large, the American people are innately fair. And I think they're able to read through what's real and what's not. So while there is some impact journalism trying to take place, a lot of it's being discounted by the voters. Let me tell you this, that the press, who I've gotten to know well, are 90% really fine people as individuals, and around the country are very fair. And there are some opinion makers and some trying to, make their own way and show off and be the one to determine the outcome of the election that aren't doing their professional service, in my opinion. But by and large, I think the press has been reasonable.
Do you find that you change your own personality at all when these lights come on and the camera's recording you?
I try not to. I try to speak more slowly because I think it helps people understand. I mean, one of the things I've learned about watching the professionals on TV is that if you can speak with somewhat, and I don't know how I'm doing, but if you can speak with clarity and be slower, you project better as opposed to, getting hyped up. But no, I don't. I try to be just exact, and I think the American people want to see that, and that's why I think they're going to like George Bush a lot, because he won't gimmick himself up. He won't be something other than he is. And the classic example of that in our family is my good mother. I can't tell you the number of times people said, dye your hair, make yourself look younger. Mother's just not going to do it. What you see in Barb Bush is what you get, a real, genuine lady. And I know instinctively she feels that the American people want to see real people in politics and not a person who's able to be one thing in private and another thing in front of a TV camera.
What did you get from each?
I got a very straightforward approach to life from my mother. She will tell it like it is. And if she doesn't like it, she'll tell you. And I think I got a sense of dignity from my dad, hopefully. I'm not so sure how dignified I am, but a good sense of proportion from my dad. He really has his priorities straight, in my opinion.
How about the rest, the other four? Of the five of you, who's the most like your father and the most like your mother?
That's hard to call. I mean, we've all got traits, hopefully good traits from them all, and of course, being the loyal son, any bad traits we developed was totally on our own. But they say I look more like my dad than the others, just from a physical appearance. I don't see that, but that's what they say. I think we all have inherited. It's hard to call. I mean, for example, one of the things, my dad is a very disciplined person. That's why he's written thousands of thank you letters all over the country to people. My brother Neil, for example, was dyslexic. And he battled dyslexia by being a disciplined student of just learning to read right correctly. And Neil showed me a lot there, courage and willing to dust himself off when he got dealt a bum hand and fight through that problem. Well, that's kind of a George Bush, my dad's view of things. When he got knocked flat after Iowa, in between Iowa and New Hampshire, he dusted himself off and went and fought hard and achieved his goal. My brother Jeb, very sensitive, tough guy, and politically, he's the man who's a party chairman in Dade County, Florida, at the age of 29 years old, public service like his dad, but a sensitive fellow as well. And my dad is very sensitive. As he said in his speech, I'm a quiet man, and I hear quiet voices that others don't hear. And I think Jeb fits that well.
Those his lines?
Yeah, it's a great line. It was true. It was so characteristic of my dad. I think that, my mom has taught us that emotion is a good thing. And my little sister Dorothy there at the convention giving the speech about my mom was talking about love and kind of burst out in tears, and not burst out in tears, but choked up a little bit and stepped back from the mic and stepped back up and said, don't worry, I'll make it through. And I think the emotional side of us in many ways, both mom and dad, but mother in particular. Mom's a very strong and person as well.
About your own kids, how many?
Twin daughters, 6-year-olders, Texas born. They totally different. Believe it, twins are they're a unique set. One is very outgoing, feisty, kind of like her dad. The other one is cerebral, like her mom. But you can't pigeonhole these girls. There's a lot of cross-pollination there. But they're great. They're and they're putting up with politics pretty darn well.
What's your wife think of all this?
My wife has a Master of Library Science from the University of Texas. She is a librarian. That is an environment where people are told not to talk. So it was a foreign environment for her. But she is also one who understands that life's experiences can be very exciting, particularly the arena of politics. She has been a great supporter of me being out there alongside my dad, and came from Midland, Texas, comes up to Washington, which, as you know, can be a pretty tough town. Made more friends than I ever dreamed I could make. Has had a wonderful experience here from her own self, broadened her horizons, and I think is going to end up saying what a wonderful experience it's been for our little family.
You ran for Congress and lost.
Yes.
Why did you run at all?
I ran because of one, as corny as this may sound, I do believe that democracy only succeeds if people with strong beliefs enter. And I entered, and had a tough primary and won it, and then ran against a good fellow, Kent Hance, who's now a Republican, in 1978. And besides the idealistic motivation, if you like politics, and I like it, I think I'm pretty good at it. I'm not sure. We'll find out as time goes on. But that timing is also important. You don't pick and choose when you feel like running. I mean, an opportunity presents itself, and if you're interested, you go. In 1978, an opportunity presented itself. Mr. Mahon, a great congressman from West Texas, retired, and I thought that I could handle my party's banner better than anybody else's in a non-egotistic way. Just looked at the field and thought I'd be a better candidate, and ran, and loved every minute of it. There was some moments I didn't like, but by and large, it was a very positive experience. We went out and raised money, encouraged a lot of people who had never been in politics to get into politics, and frankly, when it was over, was just as happy to go back in the oil and gas exploration business.
What are the chances you're going to do it again?
Good, I would think. Again, I believe that you can be in politics and conduct yourself on the highest of planes. You don't have to compromise basic beliefs and principles, and that you can have an impact on the way people live. I'm worried about my daughters. I want to make sure they get as good an education as possible. But however, what you don't do, in my view, is you don't go plotting out some strategy. I'm going to behave this way so that eventually this will happen. You go back and you get in your community. You do community service. You're in your church. You're, in the United Way or whatever opportunity to serve your fellow man comes. And then if an opportunity presents itself and things seem right and your family agrees with you, then you run. But I've got to make a living. One of the great myths is that we Bushes are extraordinarily wealthy. It looks like at this point in time, George Bush, of the four people running, presidential and vice presidential candidates, is the less wealthy of them all. And I can attest to that because I got to work. And so my first priority is to go back and find something to do that is meaningful and puts a little bread on the table.
Thanks for spending this time with us.
Thank you, sir. Watch C-SPAN.